How did a country with no exploiting natural resources become the leading economy in Africa? The story of Mauritius is indeed a fascinating one as some capture it an African miracle. But it should be made clear that the narrative is indeed wrong as Mauritius struggled and took bold decisions to become what it is today. Unlike Nigeria, Angola, Libya and Egypt where oil is prominent, or South Africa, Ghana, Tanzania with gold reserves, Mauritius' uniqueness stood out with her country having no mineral resources. The only basic economic resource it had since her inception was the sugarcane plantations. You see, unlike our African brothers who were dominated by a single colonial power, the Mauritian colonial state was an African anomaly who would struggle with colonial ownership from three different colonial powers. The Dutch would settle in Ile-de-France from 1638 until 1710. The French would take formal possession in 1715 until 1810. The island would be captured by the British in 1810 and would be renamed Mauritius. Together with its dependencies including Seychelles and Rodriguez, the island would finally be captured by the Great Britain after the signing of the Treaty of Paris in 1814. Apparently, Mauritius was ruled by the colonial powers for over 300 years. What will follow Mauritius' economic fate will be the development in sugar plantations, making it become a monocrop economy dependent on only sugar, a system equivalent to the Caribbean British colonies like Jamaica and Barbados. Yet, because labor was still needed to run the sugar estate, and because the British colonial government depended on sugar for revenue, hundreds of thousands of indentured workers from India and China were brought to the island. Interestingly, Mauritian colonial state appears far more like colonial Singapore, another former British colony that experienced direct colonial rule and rapid post-colonial development. Fast forward to the 1960s, the events of this period will shape the country's ability to become independent economically and turn out to be Africa's leading economy. Mauritius, synonymous with Botswana, was not an economic success story from the onset. So poor and uninspiring was the situation at independence that an independent study conducted in 1961 to assess the situation concluded that Mauritius was destined for economic and social failure. Thus, Mauritius was like any other country emerging from decades of colonial rule and with no economic prospects. It had insufficient resources, was vulnerable to external market shocks, and exposed to trade shocks. In 1961, a Nobel Prize laureate for economics, James Mayday, carried out a report on Mauritius, stating that its future will be greatly affected by high population density and unforeseen catastrophes such as cyclones. By 1960, two intense cyclones had devastated the island, leaving thousands homeless and prompting a housing revolution. To him, Mauritius was not going to survive the unemployment rate due to lack of jobs outside the sugar sector and the housing issues caused by cyclones. To understand where he was coming from, it is needful to note that the average population density of a country should be 25 people per square kilometers, but for Mauritius the case was different. In 1961, Mauritius had a high population density with 334 people per square kilometers, and by 1968 it had grown to 391 people per square kilometers. According to the United Nations, the island was predicted to be mired in poverty as other experts anticipated that it would rapidly descend into the normal trend of African countries after independence, which was a civil war. Civil wars in Africa had basically been caused by ethnic diversity, which was created by colonialism. It was indeed sensible enough for this prediction to be made, as the 1968 Constitution recognized 4 population categories in Mauritius, which includes the Hindus, Muslims, Sino-Mauritians, and the general population. The story of Mauritius' economic success would not be complete without paying homage to the father of the nation. Sassiou-Sagoram Goulam will lead the people to independence and would become the first Mauritian Prime Minister. On that fateful Tuesday, being the 12th of March 1968, Mauritius would gain independence from British and struggle for political, economic, and social stability. The Mauritian people, with the economic predictions laid before them by the Eurocentric scholars and the United Nations, would work towards changing that one-sided narrative, emerging as one of the most promising in the world. The key decision made by the Mauritian government set the country on the road to progress. Sassiou-Sagoram Goulam carried out a very bold action that remains remarkable to this day. The first thing he had to work on was handling the ethnic divisions through power-sharing models, ensuring that no group is left out in the decision-making process. The reason why he did this was to ensure peace, unity, and growth among the Mauritian people due to the violent clashes that occurred before and on the same year of independence. Secondly, the economy was in the outlook. The next question was, how will Mauritius conquer the issue of unemployment and wipe out our dependence on a single economic approach? His strategy was focused on an export-oriented industrialization. Through the passing of the legislation embodies in the export processing zone, a free zone was created. In 1970, Mauritius became the first Commonwealth country to join the European Economic Community, even before the United Kingdom in 1973. Mauritius could have ready access to the markets of the countries making up the European Community. There were no restrictions whatsoever on exports of products manufactured in Mauritius to the EEC countries. The going out strategy would become extremely successful as Hong Kong would decide to go into trading with Mauritius. Also, the government made its presence felt through the provision of all the economic infrastructure required: the roads, electricity, water supplies, training of labor, internal and external communications such as telephone, telex, air services, and seaport facilities. According to the targets aimed at in the 1971 to 75 4-year plan, output in the manufacturing sector should grow from 54 million in 1969 to 142 million Mauritius rupees in 1975. The EPZ strategy would indeed pay off, as many manufacturing enterprises will be set up in a short time, leading to more jobs than expected. From 1971 to 1983, the number of enterprises would increase from 9 to 146, 25 to 526 employment opportunities. In 1975, according to the government's Central Statistics Office, the Mauritian household were below 40% of the presumed poverty line. The economy of Mauritius remained on three pillars: the sugar sector in agriculture, the EPZ sector in industry, and the tourism sector. Remember the Mayday report? The one section which would also help the Mauritian economy will be overlooked in its recommendations and will be classified as not having a potential to contribute significantly to the economy. Interestingly, it is needful to note that the tourism sector developed into a third important leg, which the economy worked towards its journey to growth and development. No doubt, Sassiou-Sagoram Goulam indeed laid a good foundation for the Mauritian people. He also established free universal education and free health care center. By 1980, Mauritius would build up a significant base of export-related skills, information, and institutions far more than her neighboring African countries. In the same year, Mauritius was ranking with Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Taiwan in growth rates of manufactured exports. Countries that have pursued liberal and relatively open policy regimes have performed much better. No country that has closed itself off from world markets have achieved rapid economic growth. Currently, 87% of Mauritians now own their homes. According to 2019 edition of the Africa Country Benchmark Report, Mauritius tops the chart with the 5 basic indicators of democracy, freedom, governance, justice, and stability, followed by Botswana, Cape Verde, Namibia, and South Africa. Also, according to the World Economic Forum's 2019 Global Competitiveness Report, with Singapore, United States, and Hong Kong topping the list, Mauritius is the first African country bagging the 52nd position. Despite its diversified culture, religion, and ethnicity, Mauritius remains the most democratic country in Africa. Mauritius knew that the most important resource it had was its people and used that to their own advantage by becoming people-centered. Just like Botswana, with its global key player in diamond industry in Africa, Mauritius is a key player in the sugar production and export industry. According to Sir Anerud Jugnauth, the second Prime Minister of Mauritius, this did not occur overnight but as the result of a careful and well-crafted economic model based on pragmatic economic policies and a political commitment to turn around initial predictions. And indeed, there is no miracle. The story of Mauritius proves the basic fact that a country, despite its lapses, can rise to the top by following the right economic approach. And of course, it would be amazing if other African countries with struggling economies can learn some strategies from Mauritius. Please do well to like, share, subscribe, and turn on your post notification for more videos like this. I am Beloved Williams, and this video was produced by The Favored Media. This is Africa's Safari.